Welcome to the guide, Exile. It has been widely asked of me as of late to create a ranged build, as well as a spell-based build, so I figured I would get two birds with one stone, and combine these two with the Poet's Pen Bladefall Inquisitor. This build will be covering the entire screen in a golden Bladefall, if you have the MTX, while simultaneously body swapping around the map by simply holding down right-click, making for a quick map clearing and frame rate crushing character. The perfect build for playing with a party. Now this build, as stated in its name, is based around the Poet's Pen uniques. These weapons will provide +3 to socketed active gem level, and will trigger any socketed spell gems in them when you attack, being that with a default attack or a skill gem attack. When dual wielding them, spell gems will trigger from both wands on each attack regardless of which weapon attacks, so this means we can dual wield them and get spells casting from each of them simultaneously. For our setup, we are using a Bladefall with 2 supports and 1 Poet's Pen for our damage, and Unearth and Body Swap in the other Poet's Pen for our movement and some more damage. Now each time we trigger a spell gem, they will have a 250 millisecond cooldown before they can be triggered again. So this means we can only trigger them 4 times per second. To get ideal DPS, we must bring the attack speed of our main trigger attack skill gem to 4 times a second. For this variation, we will be using Frenzy or Barrage as our main trigger attack skill gem. Barrage is my main choice as we hit the 4 attacks per second without Frenzy charges, and Barrage can be used for life gain on hit recovery methods. Now the best part of all of this is we do not need to worry about sustaining mana, since the trigger spells do not consume mana, and we will be using Blood Magic for our main attack skill gem. To fully understand the build, let's delve a bit deeper into its interactions and what it's fully capable of. The PP Bladefall Inquisitor is an incredibly fun mapping character and quite sufficient at bossing if you have the correct investments and play smart. It certainly cannot face tank all encounters, mainly those of endgame bosses such as a red tier Elder or Shaper and his Guardians, but can handle all map bosses with ease. It is also a very consistent and very easy to level build, as we can begin using the Poet's Pens at level 12 to absolutely crush content even with budget gear aside from the pens. Offensively, we are dual wielding the Poet Pen unique wands. As explained in the beginning of the guide, these wands are extremely powerful and allow us to cast numerous spells simultaneously in quick succession without concern of mana cost. We will be making use of Bladefall with Spell Cascade in one Poet's Pen to deal our damage, and Unearth and Body Swap in the other for quick movement around maps. Unearth is used because we need to create a body to swap to, as we almost always shatter enemies and cannot swap to those destroyed corpses. For bosses, we swap Unearth and Body Swap for Hypothermia and Glacial Cascade for more damage. To make the most out of the Inquisitor Ascendancy, we will be fully converting our physical damage to elemental, and scaling critical strikes, as the Inquisitor ignores elemental resistances on a critical strike. Full elemental conversion is done by the means of Rimsorrow gloves and physical to lightning support gem on required skills. The Light Poacher is our helmet of choice, granting us a powerful physical Spirit Nova burst that is triggered whilst we are killing enemies. This is what causes the green projectiles that you see on screen. With full conversion and supports, this spell greatly assists in our clear speed. Finally, we make use of Hatred and Herald of Ice for more cold damage and wonderful Shatter explosions for more area coverage, which we so desperately need. Defensively, we are making use of instant life recovery methods. From the previously mentioned Light Poacher, we recover 5% of our maximum life on expenditure of Spirit Charges. Spirit Charges are simply used by the Light Poacher for the Spirit Burst. We gain these Spirit Charges upon killing an enemy, and expend them upon using a skill or action. Now with our main trigger skill Barrage, we attach a greater multiple projectiles and a high quality life gain on hit for instant life recovery, since Barrage hits so frequently. A Thief's Torment or 2 Elder Rings with life gain for each enemy hit by your attacks are also great supplemental recovery for more face tanking. For mitigations, we have Flasks such as a Granite or Basalt, and a cast when damage taken with a Mortal Call and Enfeeble. For serious endgame bosses, we can make use of a helmet swap for blind and cull applications on an Orb of Storms. Finally, we freeze and shatter most all enemies, making most of them inert. For playstyle, we simply hold down right-click and point our mouse cursor in the direction we wish to go. Unearth will cast a body, and then we will body swap to it. When you get to a pack of monsters, simply activate your flasks and continue to hold down right-click and watch as they immediately shatter. As stated previously, for bosses, you will want to do a gem swap for Glacial Cascade for the body swap to do more damage and be in better control of your positioning. For some bosses, after you get enough gem levels, you simply do not have to swap Glacial Cascade in, and you can kill them, albeit a bit slower, with just Bladefall. For serious endgame bosses, I will drop the Light Poacher helmet for a Sarcongus with an Orb of Storm setup. This is because the Light Poacher's effects will not trigger since we are not killing enemies. The Sarcongus will provide us more life utility, as we can generate power charges, apply blind, and have Culling Strike with an Orb of Storms. The passive tree and Path of Building pastebin are included in the description. Some pros of the build include It is very fun, fast, and satisfying to map with. You get full screen coverage with Bladefall and Spell Cascade. We get obligatory Herald of Ice explosions, which are just so satisfying, especially with the Gore MTX. Cons of the build include, it is not extremely budget friendly, but it can operate for mapping just fine, investing mainly in the weapons. We cannot completely face tank big or sustained damage without really high attack speed and life gain on hit mechanics. This build will unfortunately bring most computers to their knees at very high graphics settings. Our class in Ascendancy will be the Templar with the Inquisitor Ascendancy. The Inquisitor is one of the best Ascendancies for scaling multiple elements, since it ignores all elemental resistances on critical strike. This is very important for our build since we split our damage between cold and lightning. Righteous Providence is great for scaling our critical strikes, granting us critical strike chance on first hit, and then multiplier on our second hit, as the enemy will then be affected by a status ailment. Inevitable Judgment is the powerhouse of this Ascendancy. This node allows us to completely ignore elemental resistances on critical strike, effectively making all targets have 0 elemental resistances. This also means we cannot make use of any kind of penetration, as no penetration will be counted as we are ignoring elemental resistances. This node is especially useful on bosses whom have an innate elemental resistance on top of any map modifiers. Augury of Penitence provides us with an effective 16% more damage multiplier, as we do not apply any other increased damage taken modifiers to an enemy, and a defense of 8% less elemental damage taken. Finally, Instruments of Virtue greatly helps us scale our attack speed, as well as giving us some increased spell damage. For Ascendancy progression, I would follow this order. Here's the complete endgame passive tree. Defensively, we are taking life, some life regeneration, and flask nodes, as well as jewel sockets for more flat or percentage life. Offensively, we are stacking elemental, area, critical strikes, and attack speed nodes, as well as jewel sockets for more offensive stats. I would follow this progression into the final tree. For bandits, we will be helping Alira for the critical strike multiplier and elemental resistances. Some useful pantheons for the build include Soul of the Brine King. This will help us avoid getting chain stunned. For miners, you can use any one that you would like, as no one provides a better alternative to another. Here are the following gem links for the build. Support gem links are shown in order of importance. 4 links can go in the helmet, gloves, or boots, and 3 links can go into the weapons, unless otherwise stated. Gems with a set level are either due to their effect not scaling with level or requirement for a cast when damage taken. This is the main trigger gem set up for our Poet's Pens. We do not care for how much damage it does, we only care for its utility of triggering the Poet's Pens at 4 attacks per second and providing us with life gain on hit. Barrage has an incredibly fast hit rate with added projectiles, allowing us to have almost instant leech effect with enough life gain on hit. If you do not have a 6 link, I would make an effort to get accuracy where you can on gear, tree, or jewels to help ensure that you are always hitting with your barrage, or dropping blood magic in lieu of a mana sustain from some other gear such as an Elder Ring with mana gain on hit, or percentage leech, or a Thief's Torment. Frenzy is also a good option if you only plan on doing mapping and no intense bossing. This is our aura and auto curse setup for mapping, and bosses that may have nearby adds. A cast when damage taken to help provide some more mitigation, along with a movement skill to reposition in fights when required. Due to the use of a Light Poacher unique, this link set will only be supports to enhance the Spirit Nova burst within the helmet. It does not need to be linked, but you may link it if you wish. This will make your Spirit Nova burst have better coverage and hit much harder when you are mapping. Now this link setup should be placed in one of your Poet's Pens. This is the main damage skill for the build. I recommend swapping to Concentrated Effect on serious or endgame bosses, otherwise Spell Cascade can be used on most all map bosses. This link setup should be placed in your other Poet's Pen. This is the main method for movement in maps. You will cast an Unearth and then body swap to it whilst you hold down your right click. The reason for Concentrated Effect is for our gem swap on bosses as seen next, as we do not much care for damage coverage of the body swap and it makes the gem swapping quicker. For bosses, I recommend swapping in your second Poet's Pen with the Unearth and body swap to the following. This gem setup will provide a massive damage boost on single target while also letting you better focus your barrage fire for life sustain. As mentioned before, you do not always need to swap to this, only on more serious bosses. Finally, if you intend to do endgame bosses such as Guardians or Elder, you will want to swap your Light Poacher for another helmet for more life and utility. I chose a Starkonjas for the large amounts of life, critical strike chance, and attack speed. With this link setup, you can maintain power charges while gaining some defense from the blind and early cull kill. Required unique gear to start this build includes 2 Poet's Pens. These are the main part of your build and what it is designed around. Without these, the build would not work. You will need 2 of these. Brimsorrow Gloves. These are required to fully convert your Bladefall and Light Poacher Spirit Nova from physical to elemental damage. Here are other uniques that I use. A Carcass Jack. This chest is great for its bonus area of effect and area damage. It also has a decent life roll and elemental resistances. A Light Poacher. As mentioned previously, this helmet is excellent for the Spirit Nova burst that helps clear maps quicker, as well as the 5% life recovery on using a Spirit Charge. Here are other optional uniques. A Belly of the Beast. As always, this chest is a great option for increasing your life pool, and with our gem links, it can color easily. Essence Worm. You can use this ring and place your hatred into it for some more damage, and open up a socket for use of another aura, such as Arctic Armor. Thief's Torment. For this ring, you will have to sacrifice using your other ring, as well as life on rings, but ultimately gain another life gain on hit gem built into the ring. It will also let you drop your blood magic on your main barrage links for lesser multiple projectiles, to get more life gain on hit, or just run a 5 link. This is a good ring to start out with, and what I used initially. For rare gear, you will be looking for any base of gear. Here are the affixes that we will want to look for on our rare gear, along with all of the rare gear that was used on my character. There are only a few requirements of your rare gear. For your amulet, you'll want to get an amulet with more than 40 dexterity. This can vary depending on your gearing and level. This will ensure that you have enough dexterity to level your Bladefall, which requires 155 dexterity. If you need more dexterity, feel free to spec it in the tree while you are leveling. Rings. If you choose not to use a Thief's Torment, I highly recommend getting Elder Rings with life gain for each enemy hit by your attacks. These will greatly help in your sustain on top of providing resistance, life, and possible offensive stats. These can get pricey, but I managed to get the ones you see used in my build for 10 to 15 chaos apiece. Abyss Jewel. You want to make sure that you get 1 Abyss Jewel with percentage chance to gain Onslaught for 4 seconds on kill. This is how you will sustain Onslaught whilst mapping. You can place this jewel in your Light Poacher, so if you choose to helmet swap on serious bosses, you won't lose a good DPS jewel, as this effect won't reliably trigger on bosses. For enchantments, you will want to look for 40% increased Bladefall damage or Glacial Cascade damage. On boots, 16% increased attack speed or percentage damage leached as life and mana are great options for mapping. For bossing, 120% increased critical strike chance is very nice. For recovery flasks, you will want a Divine Life Flask with instant or increased recovery rate. For utility flasks, you want to make use of the following. A Diamond Flask. This helps bolster your critical strike chance and is recommended that you roll it with the Experimenter's prefix to extend its duration. A Granite or Basalt. You can either use a Granite or Basalt to help you with physical mitigations. Here are the unique flasks that I use and recommend. Adziri's Promise, an all-around great damage flask for conversion builds. It also provides some life leech and costs basically nothing. The Overflowing Chalice. This flask allows us to spam our other flasks more, as we gain increased flask charges while this flask is up. It also grants us 40% increased damage and Consecrated Ground for life regeneration, as it is a sulfur flask base. Since we do not get to use our Poet's Pens until level 12, and we don't get our main skills Bladefall and Glacial Cascade until level 28, we will be using a few different skills until then. For our gem progression, I will assume you can purchase the supports from other players, or you have a leveled character as you have the Poet's Pens. At level 12, you want to equip your Poet's Pens and socket a Firestorm and a Stormcall with the respective supports. For your trigger, we can use a Barrage with LMP and life gain on hit for early life sustain method. At level 18, we will simply swap out the added lightning damage for Control Destruction, and we can now swap to Frenzy or continue using Barrage as you're leveling. At level 28, we can now use our main skills Bladefall and Glacial Cascade. You will also want to drop your Herald of Thunder for Hatred. From here, you will just want to fill out your supporting skill gems as you can. The Poet's Pens really carry your character through content with no supporting gear or skills. I did not use Unearth and Body Swap until I was in maps, since I was originally not considering using that in my main setup. You can try using earlier if you'd like, but I found using Bladefall and Glacial Cascade in tandem dealt much more damage than dealing with flickering around while leveling. Well, if this build doesn't whet your fancy for a ranged spellcaster build with absurd levels of golden blade coverage, body-consuming clear speed, and computer-destroying particle effects, I just don't know what will. All in all, this build was incredibly fun to level, and play through to the endgame. Even though we cannot decimate bosses as fast or as easy with the Molten Struck Scion, we can effortlessly cruise through maps holding down right-click while sipping on our flasks. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one, Exile.